of the predictions of the Prophet ﷺ as well, of the trends that are given. And again, this is very interesting. See, here's what I want you to think about. Just a hypothetical scenario. A'udhu billah, it's hypothetical. Imagine a false prophet, a charlatan, in the middle, of nowhere 1,500 years ago. And imagine if he had to make predictions. What I'm trying to say, it's impossible that what we are reading would have been predicted by a false prophet. The very notions that are coming indicate that the one who said this, Allah is communicating with him. That's what I'm trying to say. No one could have imagined what the Prophet ﷺ predicted is going to happen, and we are seeing it over here. And of the things he predicted is kitaba, writing would become prevalent. Writing would become prevalent. Literacy rates. Once again, who could have predicted? When the Quran was revealed in Mecca, the city of Mecca probably had around 2,000, 1,500 people, 2,000 people in it. Of those 1,500, 2,000, probably less than a dozen could read and write. That's like what? 1%. 1%. And our Prophet ﷺ predicted, إِنَّ مِنْ عَلَامَاتِ السَّاعَةِ, of the signs of Judgment Day, is kitaba, will be prevalent. Remember, most of the Sahaba could not read and write, because that was the society. Nobody taught them. That's the way they were. To predict that reading and writing will become the norm, not just in Muslim lands, but in the globe, is once again beyond even understanding. And this is exactly what he predicted. Now, another prediction seems to contradict this one. And that's the hadith in Sahih Bukhari. The hadith of Kitaba is in Muslim Imam Ahmad. Sahih Bukhari mentions another prediction. That one of the signs of the end of times is that ignorance will prevail. Jahl will be everywhere. Ignorance will prevail. Now, how can ignorance prevail? And at the same time, the Prophet is saying reading and writing will prevail. Is this not a contradiction? And the response is, each hadith is valid, but it applies to different things. When the Prophet ﷺ is saying ignorance will prevail, he's not talking about reading and writing. He's talking about knowledge of right and wrong. He's talking about common sense. And when he's talking about kitaba, he's talking about literacy. Before the rise of the internet, those of you who witnessed that era, in the 80s and 90s, mankind foolishly believed that if only we could give people access to education, they will all become intellectuals. The internet came, and all of Encyclopedia Britannica times 100 became free of charge. Wikipedia and this and that. Any database you want is there. Any journal you're there. And mankind has not gone more intelligent. It has even taken a nosedive beyond that. This is what our Prophet ﷺ is saying. Kitaba will increase. Jahala will also increase. It's not a contradiction. Because not necessarily just because you're reading, your intelligence will increase. So, there is no contradiction in that. There are many other trends that are predicted as well. I want to come to a conclusion. There's only 5 minutes left, and I'll give you time for Q&A, inshallah. Come to a conclusion. And by the way, this isn't an exhaustive list. Realize, of course, that, for our classes, obviously, there have to be some condensation of the material. Many other things are predicted as well. And there's another entire section of a hadith that are not authentic. What I mentioned to you in today's lecture, every hadith is authentic, inshaAllah ta'ala. I didn't even get to the da'if hadith in this regard. But just want to mention off with the final of the minor signs, and we mentioned him on Saturday, but just to reiterate, that our Prophet ﷺ predicted the coming of one man. And his name will be Muhammad ibn Abdullah. And he will be called by the people the rightly guided, which is the Mahdi. And he predicted in over 30 hadith, I mentioned around 15 of them on Saturday we did, and I mentioned over 15 of them, and the concept is definitely authentic. He predicted the coming of this man. And our scholars mentioned this man is the final of the minor signs of Judgment Day, and that is the Mahdi. And the Mahdi will be a link or a bridge between the minor signs and the beginning of the major signs. between the minor signs and the beginning of the major signs. And the beginning of the major signs will be the coming of Dajjal. That is the first of the 10 major signs, and that's going to be our lectures inshallah in our next lesson when we continue after coming back from Hajj. The first of the major signs is Dajjal. The Mahdi will be alive when Dajjal comes. So the last of the minor signs, the first of the major signs will coincide with one another, and the Mahdi will see the coming of Dajjal. He will fight Dajjal but will not be successful. Then the second of the major signs will come, and that is Isa ibn Maryam. And the Mahdi will be alive at that time, and the Mahdi will fight in the army of Isa, and then eventually Isa will be the one who kills Ad-Dajjal, and then there is no mention of the Mahdi. By the way, there's another interesting sign mentioned, and Allah knows best what it implies, but the hadith is in Sahih Bukhari. And it is that judgment will not come until 12 khulafa from the Quraysh will lead the ummah. 12 Khalifas, kulluhum min Quraysh, they will lead this ummah. And scholars have differed who these 12 are. Ibn Taymiyyah has an ijtihad, and that's the first 4, and then Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, and then his 4. So he wants to put them in the Umayyad time frame. He wants to make all of them in the Umayyad time frame. And then it is from this hadith that the non-Sunni denomination, you understand what I'm saying here, the non-Sunni, I don't like to mention terms explicitly, but the largest denomination of the non-Sunni denomination, okay? Because you have the 5ers, you have the 7ers, you have the 12ers. So the 12ers, where did one of the evidences they get it from? They got it from this hadith, which is actually in Sahih Bukhari. Okay? And of course, the hadith has nothing to do with their theology. But they took it and they then made the number 12 from it. Our tradition doesn't say that these 12 are going to be superhumans flying in the air, walking on water. No. It's just going to be 12 righteous leaders. Kulluhum min Quraysh. All of them will be from the Quraysh. And so there's going to be 12 powerful khulafa. Overall, they were good khulafa. And as I said, Ibn Taymiyyah wants to mention, 6 of the Umayyads and 4 of the Khulafa ar-Rashidun and others, and he adds them on. So Allah knows best, we don't know. But a hadith mentions there will be 12 Qurayshis that will be there. And with this, inshaAllah ta'ala, we will pause for 2 weeks. I'm going for Hajj inshaAllah in 2 days. I pray that Allah Azza wa Jal accepts the Hajj of all of us going for Hajj and allows us to return safely to our families and friends. And then inshaAllah we'll resume this class, Wednesday class, after 2 weeks of absence. We'll come back and then continue from the first of the major signs, which is Ad-Dajjal. And then we will discuss the controversies over Dajjal. Is he alive right now? Is he locked up in some cave somewhere in the Bahamas or whatever? Not the Bahamas, it doesn't make sense. Some Caribbean island. No, what's that? Not the Bahamas. I'm thinking of Bermuda Triangle. That's what I'm thinking, yeah. The Bermuda Triangle. Is he locked up over there somewhere? All of these controversies, inshallah, we will discuss when the class resumes after that. So we open the floor now for Q&A, insha'Allah ta'ala. Sisters, get your questions ready, because as of yet I haven't heard much questions from the sisters. Keep them relevant to the class. Bismillah, go ahead. So let me rephrase the question. When we are preaching and teaching Islam, these ambiguous hadith come up, cryptic predictions of Judgment Day. What is the best way to teach or approach these subjects? Look, where the wording is cryptic, we should always narrate the wording and then say, Allah knows best, this seems to be an interpretation. We should never categorically say, this is what the Prophet intended. How do we know? I'll give you an example. This lecture was not exhaustive. One of the predictions of our Prophet ﷺ is that you will fight a group of people, their eyes will be squinty. Hadith says that. And their faces will be flat like a shield. Okay? And scholars have interpreted that to mean Genghis Khan. Maybe that's true. Maybe that is true. But I'll give you another example. The Quran mentions the coming of Ya'juj and Ma'juj. حَتَّى إِذَا فُتِحَتْ يَأْجُوجُ مَأْجُوجُ وَهُمْ مِنْ كُلِّ حَدَبٍ يَنْسِلُونَ. When Genghis Khan came, and he massacred, blood everywhere, outside the city of Urgench, which I visited a few weeks ago. I was in Urgench a few weeks ago. He made a pyramid of 1 million Muslim skulls. 1 million. He massacred the whole city, and he made a pyramid of the heads of the women and children and men over there. The Muslims, witnessing the conquest of Genghis Khan, they swore by Allah, this has to be Ya'juj and Ma'juj. And Qiyamah is going to come right now. We're just waiting for Isa to come and Dajjal to come, because Genghis Khan is Ya'juj and Ma'juj. And all of the ahadith about Ya'juj and Ma'juj, they applied it to Genghis Khan. And perhaps if we were alive back then, we too would have been certain we are seeing Ya'juj and Ma'juj. What else are you going to think? وَهُمْ مِنْ كُلِّ حَدَبٍ يَنْسِلُونَ. You're going to be coming from everywhere and doing all of this. They look like Ya'juj and Ma'juj. The descriptions are there. But it turns out they weren't Ya'juj and Ma'juj. So, from this we learn, never ever ever take a cryptic hadith and then be certain. Go ahead and say, perhaps. So I just said today that the Prophet predicted barefoot shepherds competing with one another. Now, in our times, we see this happening. What if a generation later, an even more explicit example happens? Because right now, the people competing, their fathers were barefoot shepherds. The actual 3 or 4 princes were born in the lap of luxury. So, it's nothing wrong to apply this hadith here, and that's why I said it looks like it's happening. But how do we know? Maybe next generation, literally something will happen, and you will have barefoot shepherds doing this. Then that generation will say, aha, look, this hadith is now applicable. So go ahead and give an ijtihad if the scholars have done it. You can quote Ibn Hajar, you can quote, go ahead. But always say Allah knows best. And leave cryptic hadith as they are, and Allah knows what the future will hold, inshallah. Okay? Sisters, a question. Yes, go ahead, sisters, go ahead. Ya'juj and Ma'juj in the timeline we will do inshallah in a few weeks. They are after Dajjal, and they are before the trumpet is blown, when Isa and his followers are still around. So Ya'juj and Ma'juj will come at a time frame when Dajjal has been killed. There shall be peace in the world. Remember I said last Tuesday or last Wednesday that the sine wave is going to go higher and lower and higher and lower. It's going to be the best of times. I'm quoting Charles Dickens here. It's the best of times, the worst of times. You're going to go up and down. So at that time frame, Ya'juj and Ma'juj will come after one of the highs, where Isa is in charge, the world is at peace. Then will be one of the lowest of lows, and that is Ya'juj and Ma'juj. Then there will be yet another high, and then the believers will be taken away. So we'll mention this story inshallah in 4 to 5 weeks, because we're going to do Dajjal and others. Ya'juj and Ma'juj will come towards even after that. Back to the brothers. Bismillah, yes, go ahead. This is Ya'juj and Ma'juj. We will mention Dhul Qarnayn. But Dhul Qarnayn is not one of the signs of Judgment Day. Our brother wants to put Dhul Qarnayn with the Eskimos. And Allah knows best where Dhul Qarnayn went. We do not know. Allah knows best. And the hadith do not mention. And I'll talk about Dhul Qarnayn. Dhul Qarnayn is a past figure who plays a role for Ya'juj and Ma'juj. Something happened in the past that will play a role for Ya'juj and Ma'juj. We'll talk about that inshallah in a few weeks. Back to the sisters. Yes, go ahead. So our sister asks, what is the narrative of Christians in their belief of Jesus coming? First, they realize one segment of Christians, typically Baptists and certain strands of evangelicals. These are the ones that are embracing the second coming of Jesus. And that is why you will find a group called Christian Zionists. There are Christians who are the most ardent supporters of Zionism, because they believe that when the children of Israel are all gathered in the Holy Land, that is a necessary precursor for the coming of Jesus Christ. And that is why some of the most ardent Zionists of this country are not Jewish people. They are people of a Christian background. Our current guy in the office, he is flirting with Christian Zionists because he wants their support. He wants to get them to support him because of his policy. So their version of events is that, and again there are multiple interpretations, their version of events is that when Jesus will come, those who truly believed in him will magically disappear and be transported to heaven with him. Okay? And the wretched will be left on earth. So they have this notion of Jesus coming back, gathering his followers, and with his followers magically being transported to heaven. So they're just going to disappear and go into heaven. So there's a series, a very prominent series, Left Behind. Okay, it's one of the most popular readings amongst the evangelical community. The youth, the housewives, they love it. It is national bestsellers. Why? What's it about? Those that are left behind. Those that didn't make it to Jesus' cut because they weren't Christian enough. So the goal is you better be Christian enough so you're not left behind. And of course they do believe in the Armageddon, they do believe in a massive war between good and evil, and in the end Jesus is going to win. Now by the way, this leads me to an interesting point. A lot of times these people, they say, oh look, your hadith mentioned war and bloodshed and Armageddon, look at this, the violence and whatnot. And the response is very clear. We say to them, this is going to be a war between Jesus and the Antichrist. If you want to choose to be on the side of the Antichrist, that's your business. But we're going to choose the side of Jesus. And this is the irony. We believe that Isa ibn Maryam will be our leader. When Isa comes back, he will be our leader, not theirs. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَإِن مِّنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ إِلَّا لَيُؤْمِنَنَّ بِهِ قَبْلَ مَوْتِهِ. Not a single person of Ahl Kitab will be there except that he shall believe in Jesus before Jesus dies. Meaning, when Isa comes back, every Ahl Kitab that had even an atom's weight of Iman will become a Muslim at that time, and only those who had no Iman will choose Dajjal over Isa. And then do you blame us if the hadith happen and the bloodshed happens? Don't look at us after that, inshallah. Back to the brothers. Yes, go ahead, brothers. Very good question. Question is about, are there a hadith about Ghazwat Hind, conquering India? Yes, there are a number of traditions, about 3 to be more precise, about the notion of Muslims will conquer India, and those that conquer India will be of the greatest armies, etc., etc. However, all of them are slightly weak. One of them is slightly weak, one of them is da'if jiddan. And so that is why I did not put it in my lecture here. They do exist. And if you attended the lecture yesterday, I talked about da'if hadith, and we said that da'if hadith can be used for what, guys? Who remembers? For encouraging. But they cannot be used for legal matters or theological matters. And belief in Judgment Day is theology. So we cannot be certain. But I don't have any problem quoting them if we had a longer lecture and simply pointing out that in some ahadith, Ghazwat Hind is predicted. And the Prophet ﷺ praised the army that will attack Hind. But these ahadith have a slight weakness in them. So we cannot be certain that the Prophet ﷺ said them, but we hope he said them. And especially for our Muslim brothers in India, they need some help. So we hope that inshallah those are true. Final question from the sisters, yes. 2 back, okay, quickly, one after the other, quickly. So both of these wordings indicate a prophecy. The fact that something's happening in the future, the fact that Day of Judgment will not happen until this happens. So regardless, they're both signs of Judgment Day. Because he's prophesizing they're going to happen in the future. They're neutral. Signs are neutral. They're going to happen. Sister behind you, go ahead. So this is a very good question. Inshallah, we'll discuss it maybe in an open Q&A because this is not related directly to signs of Judgment Day. And by the way, I have a clip on YouTube. The sister asked, how do we explain Muslim conquest around the world? What if somebody says to us, our religion went and conquered all of these lands and there was no threat from these lands? Why did you guys conquer the world? I actually have, I think, a 15-20 minute YouTube clip from my seerah. Somebody took it out in there. My problem is I don't know what the titles are. But Google it, just YouTube it, explaining Muslim conquest. I think Muslim conquests. Yeah, Muslim conquests. Just try Muslim conquest on YouTube. Final question from the brothers. There's 2 minutes left. Yes, go ahead. The brother asks, the coming of Isa, is it before the Tawbah door closed or after the door of Tawbah? No, it is before. It is before. Why? Because, believe it or not, lots of people will see Isa and Dajjal and choose Dajjal over Isa. Why? Because they don't believe in the Hadith in the first place. They're not going to believe in the Hadith. Even when they see Dajjal, they're not going to believe in the Hadith. So those who believe in the Quran and believe in the Sunnah, they will choose Isa over Dajjal. Those righteous Christians who truly believe in Isa, they will choose Isa over Dajjal. But there will be groups of Christians whose arrogance will be like Iblis. They see the truth and reject it. So the door of Tawbah will remain open because there will still be a test. Do you believe in Allah and His Messenger and Isa or not? And if you do, the door of Tawbah will be accepted. Only the last sign of the 10, the very last sign, which is the rising of the sun from the west. That is the last of the 10 signs. That sign, there is no interpretation for it. And when that happens, the door of Tawbah will be shut. And inshallah, with that, we will stop for today and continue inshallah. 2 weeks Hajj break, and then continue after that. You'll get the email to continue inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.